So maybe you're on the hunt for a new OLED and you're looking for the best deal possible. And what is this? Who is INNOCN? And more importantly, who's my daddy? But yes, they do have a 34Q1R Quantum dot OLED monitor, which by the way was sent to me for this review. It's a 34-inch 3440 by 1440 175 Hz 21 by 9 QD OLED with an alleged response time of 0.03 milliseconds. And yes, of course, it does support G-Sync and FreeSync. Now, in terms of the overall design of this product, I'll be honest, at first I didn't love it, but it has grown on me. Sure, it has quite a bit of a chin, but that does allow for better speakers, which we'll talk about later. My only nitpick is it does feel like it has somewhat more affordable feeling plastic, we'll say, as the shell. Now, yes, it does also have standard vase mount support, 100 by 100 millimeters, and the stand itself overall is pretty decent, moving in at least most directions that you would want it to do so. Now, in terms of the ports, pause if you need to, but do be aware you will have to use DisplayPort to get the full refresh rate of 175 Hz. Now, in terms of the price, typically this seems to sit around $680 up to $700, but I could have sworn, guys, I saw this at a way lower price at some point during a discount. Maybe I'm wrong, but INNOCN does typically run discounts, so you might want to check my affiliate links in the description below to see if it's on a heavy discount. If that is the case, it could be really good value. Now, what about the actual performance? Should you risk going with a lesser known brand over something like MSI, ASUS, etc.? And let's find out by taking a look first at the color. My first impressions of the color are it's Quantum dot OLED. It's absolutely excellent. It's going to be the best color that you're going to get out of any other monitor technology, which is going to be especially helpful for HDR content that really wants to punch up the brightness of those colors. However, in terms of the actual accuracy, out of the box, sRGB is following EOTF brightness curve fairly well, but does have a slightly off RGB balance that can be corrected on the monitor itself, thankfully. However, in HDR, my unit for some reason wanted to still be on the Gamma 2.2 curve and not the HDR ST 2084 curve. That was strange. I was able to correct that, but it still was not following the brightness curve quite right. It was just over brightening some stuff, so that can be an issue for accuracy. Now, in terms of the color volume, very, very good stuff. We're talking 107% DCI-P3, well above what you need to get really great color in HDR. Now, in terms of the brightness, just like every single other QD OLED that I've reviewed, unfortunately, this has the same issues where, sure, it's definitely good enough for desktop usage, but if you're expecting those really crazy highlights that you get on TVs or mini LED monitors, not going to be the case, and so it's just not going to be as wowing as you might expect. And as you can see here in my brightness charts, it's right there, smack dab in the middle of all the other QD OLEDs. Also, in terms of an actual game, this time, actually, it was technically the lowest, but it was by a pretty small margin. Now, in terms of the shadow performance, overall pretty good. It does have some shadow crush, but that's to be expected with OLED technology. And then moving on to the gaming performance, this would probably be the main reason you would be picking up an ultra-wide OLED. Sure, you get all those other benefits of OLED, like it being super fast, the per pixel local dimming, and of course HDR, but how fast is it? And here you can see it's pretty much within margin of error of the other QD OLEDs. It's a little bit slower, and that's probably mostly to do with the slightly lower refresh rate of 175 Hz versus the 240 Hz of all the others I've tested, but overall definitely very good for the latency there. Now, in terms of the motion performance, this I would say is just as important, and thankfully here it is very good, but it's not quite on par with the 240 Hz or, as you can see to the right, 480 Hz OLEDs that are starting to become available. Now, in terms of the text clarity and subpixel layout, I would say overall it's not so great. I do feel like QD OLED, because it has that triangular RGB subpixel arrangement does really benefit from higher resolutions like 4K. It does help the text look a lot better. So at 1440p, this triangle arrangement can be a bit of an issue. Now, in terms of the finish and perceived clarity, well, it's actually very good because you do get a glossy coating, which means that the colors are gonna pop a lot more. You're gonna get a better perceived contrast, at least in my opinion, as well as you are going to get much more crisp detail, something that you just can't get on a matte coating. So definitely a good choice for a coating, but be aware because this is QD OLED. QD OLED specifically suffers from a magenta or gray tint when you introduce ambient light, so you will want to be playing games in a dark room or watching movies in a dark room if you want to get the full contrast this panel can provide. Now, quickly, let's touch on the sound because as you can see, it actually does have room for what you would imagine would be pretty decent speakers, and yeah, they're pretty decent. I mean, it's certainly better than most tinny monitor speakers, but it can still suffer from distortion, especially at high volume levels. It's not horrible, but it definitely is audible, and it's not gonna have hi-fi levels of clarity. Just keep those expectations in check, and I think you'll find they're very usable and pretty decent overall. Now, let's talk about the menu in the firmware because, fellas, it's strange. It's not good at all. The menu is not only kind of weird to navigate in terms of intuitively, but also the buttons themselves. It's like the way they have it going where you push right or up or down or left, basically, it's just completely not what you would expect and an absolute nightmare to navigate. I cannot stand this menu. It's awful. However, yes, it does work, and I didn't really run into too many bugs, so yeah, it's fine, I guess, but for the love of God, make it more user-friendly with your next one. In terms of G-Sync flickering, yeah, you probably will be getting some in some games, especially if it's dark and your frame rate is unstable. That can happen. Overall, I will say, while I did complain about a few things, the picture quality is very good, especially in HDR, as you can get the infinite contrast, the super fast response times, and the excellent color volume and per pixel local dimming of QD OLED. That's just something that is leagues above LCD, and frankly, even though this panel does have a few problems, it's still better than mini LED. But with the incorrect HDR EOTF tracking, a very poor menu experience, and I forgot to mention this one, coil whine that can occur if you have the charging function enabled at the base of the stand. That's why I didn't talk about it. This monitor is either going to need some revisions to the firmware and hardware, or will need to be sold at a lower price when compared to other 34-inch QD OLEDs to make it worth a purchase. So yes, it's good, especially when you disable the wireless charging, which is kind of a shame because that's a really cool feature. Then yeah, there's nothing absolutely horrible about it. You throw it into HDR and hey, it works, it looks good. And so you might want to give my affiliate links to this monitor in the description below a check because again, INNOCN does seem to run some pretty heavy discounts on a lot of their monitors. So if you could find this thing close to like 500 bucks, yeah, absolutely, that could be worth saving that money if you're not too pressed about HDR accuracy. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, Rupro has you covered with their certified 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable available in sizes of up to 50 feet and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K 60 FPS or 4K 144 FPS 10-bit HDR video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports ER. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out Rupro on Amazon today.